China just made a move that could shut down American industry overnight, and they control 90% of what we need to fight back. What does this mean for your phone, your car, and America's military? I'll break down the threat in the next 60 seconds. China dropped a bombshell on October 9th that should terrify every American who cares about our economic independence. Beijing announced sweeping export controls on rare earth elements, the critical minerals that power everything from your smartphone to F-35 fighter jets. And here's the kicker. China controls 90% of global rare earth magnet production and 85% of all refining capacity. This isn't just about trade. This is about China holding a gun to America's head. Let me explain exactly what happened and why you should be paying attention. On October 9th, China's Ministry of Commerce announced 6 new proclamations that fundamentally changed the game. Starting November 8th, they're requiring licenses for rare earth exports. But the real nuclear option kicks in December 1st. Any product anywhere in the world containing more than 0.1% Chinese rare earths will need Beijing's approval to be exported. Think about that for a second. If a German car company uses Chinese rare earths in their electric vehicle motors, they'll need permission from the Chinese Communist Party to ship that car to America. If a Japanese tech firm builds semiconductors using Chinese materials, Beijing gets veto power over where those chips go. A former White House advisor put it bluntly. China has crafted a policy that gives it the power to forbid any country on Earth from participating in the modern economy. Now, why are rare earths so critical? These 17 metallic elements are the hidden ingredients in virtually every piece of modern technology. Neodymium powers the magnets in electric vehicle motors and wind turbines. Europium makes your smartphone screen light up. Terbium is essential for sonar systems on our Navy's submarines. Dysprosium strengthens the magnets in missile guidance systems. Without rare earths, American manufacturing grinds to a halt. Our defense industry can't build the weapon systems we need. Our tech sector can't compete. Our transition to electric vehicles and renewable energy? Dead in the water. China knows this. They've spent decades building this chokehold while America wasn't paying attention. President Trump reacted swiftly and forcefully. On October 10th, he announced a 100% tariff on all Chinese goods, on top of existing tariffs. He's also implementing new export controls on critical American software and threatened to cancel his planned meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping in South Korea later this month. Trump called China's move shocking. And you know what? He's absolutely right to be alarmed. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent revealed something explosive on Wednesday. He described China's chief trade negotiator Li Chenggang as slightly unhinged and disrespectful. According to Bessent, Li threatened to unleash chaos on the global system if the U.S. went ahead with port fee increases on Chinese vessels. These aren't just trade negotiations anymore. This is personal. This is a battle of wills between two superpowers, and the stakes couldn't be higher. So what does this mean for America? Let me break it down into 4 critical areas. First, your wallet. Rare earth shortages have already forced American car companies to curb production. If China follows through with strict enforcement, expect prices to spike on electronics, vehicles, and appliances. That new iPhone you've been eyeing could cost hundreds more. Planning to buy an electric vehicle? Good luck finding one at a reasonable price. Second, our military readiness. The Pentagon depends on rare earths for everything from jet engines to precision-guided munitions. China's Commerce Ministry specifically cited the important uses of medium and heavy rare earths in the military field as justification for controls. They're not hiding it. They want leverage over American defense capabilities. A director at the Center for Strategic and International Studies warned that these restrictions will deepen vulnerabilities and further widen the capability gap between U.S. and Chinese military technology. At a time when tensions are rising in the Indo-Pacific, China is accelerating its military expansion while potentially slowing ours. Third, American jobs and manufacturing. We've already seen China successfully redirect exports away from America to Europe. Chinese exports to the EU grew by over 14% in September, the strongest showing in 3 years. Trump's tariff strategy is hitting roadblocks because China has options. American workers? Not so much. Should the U.S. have built its own rare earth processing capacity decades ago? Comment yes or no below and tell me why you think we let China dominate this market. Fourth, our technological future. Remember, these controls don't just cover raw materials. Starting December 1st, they include technologies for rare earth mining, smelting, separation, metal smelting, magnet manufacturing, and recycling. China isn't just controlling the supply, they're controlling the knowledge of how to break free from their control. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. China claims these measures are consistent with international practice and that they're just doing what America and other countries have done for decades. Their Commerce Ministry points out that the U.S. Commerce Control List covers over 3,000 items compared to China's roughly 900. Here's my take. That's a false equivalence, and you know it. American export controls target specific national security threats, preventing adversaries from getting weapons technology and advanced chips that could be used against us. China's controls are about raw economic coercion. They're saying, play by our rules, or we turn off the lights on your entire economy. There's a massive difference between protecting your defense technology and holding the global economy hostage. But I'll acknowledge this. America should have seen this coming. We got complacent. We outsourced our supply chain security to the lowest bidder and didn't care that the lowest bidder answered to Beijing. That's on us, on both political parties over multiple administrations. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next critical update on this situation. So what happens in the next 48 hours? Here's your checklist of what to watch. 1. The November 9th deadline. The current 90-day tariff truce between the U.S. and China expires around then. Secretary Besant hinted that another extension could be possible if China backs down on rare earth controls. Will Beijing blink, or will they double down? 2. The November 1st tariff implementation. Trump's 100% tariff is supposed to kick in November 1st. Markets are already jittery. Watch for whether this deadline holds or if there's last-minute negotiation. 3. The Trump-Xi meeting in South Korea. Originally scheduled for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in late October, Trump has threatened to cancel. Both leaders need this meeting for different reasons. Will it happen? And if it does, what deals get cut behind closed doors? 4. China's response to Trump's tariffs. So far, Beijing has been notably restrained. They haven't announced retaliatory tariffs yet. That's unusual. Are they playing the long game or preparing something bigger? 5. American industry reaction. Watch major tech companies, automakers, and defense contractors. Are they scrambling for alternative suppliers, stockpiling materials, or quietly lobbying Washington to cave to Chinese demands? Here's the broader context you need to understand. This confrontation didn't start with rare earths. It started when the U.S. Commerce Department expanded its entity list in late September to include Chinese companies and their subsidiaries that were using shell games to bypass export restrictions on chip-making equipment. China views that as economic warfare. America views China's rare earth controls the same way. Both sides are convinced they're the ones responding to aggression, not starting it. But there's a bigger truth here. we're watching the emergence of two completely separate economic spheres, a US-led system and a China-led system. Companies will increasingly be forced to choose sides. Countries will have to pick teams. The era of globalized supply chains that ignore geopolitical reality, that's over. Treasury Secretary Bessent said something revealing. He credited the level of trust between Trump and Xi with preventing tensions from escalating further. Despite the harsh rhetoric, despite the tariffs and counter-tariffs, both leaders seem to recognize they need each other at the negotiating table. That's a thin thread, but it might be the only thing preventing a full economic decoupling that would devastate both economies. China's Commerce Ministry spokesperson He Yongqian stated on Thursday that the U.S. is deliberately stirring up unnecessary misunderstanding and panic about the rare earth controls. She insisted that compliant applications intended for civilian use will be approved. But here's the problem. Who decides what's compliant? Who determines civilian versus military use when we're talking about dual-use technology? Beijing does. That's arbitrary power, and it's exactly the leverage China wants. The United States cannot allow a hostile power to have veto authority over American economic activity. Period. That's not about being hawkish. That's about basic sovereignty. So what's the path forward? America needs to get serious about building domestic rare earth production and processing capacity. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it's not as profitable as buying cheap materials from China. Yes, environmental regulations make it harder. But national security isn't supposed to be easy or cheap. Some supply chains are too critical to outsource to geopolitical rivals. The good news? It's possible. The U.S. has rare earth deposits. We have the technology. We have capital markets that can fund the build-out. What we've lacked is political will. A senior fellow at the Foundation for American Innovation put it perfectly. Supply is elastic. If our lives depend on it, we can surmount many challenges far faster than the policy planners in Beijing, Brussels, and Washington realize. That's the American spirit right there. We've overcome bigger challenges. We can overcome this one too. But it requires leadership that puts American interests first. It requires bipartisan cooperation to fund strategic industries. It requires companies willing to prioritize national security over quarterly earnings. Do we have that? That's the question. Here's my bottom line. China just played one of their strongest cards. They're betting that America needs them more than they need America. They're betting that our dependence on their rare earths will force us to back down on semiconductor controls, accept their terms on trade, and ultimately acknowledge their dominance. I think they're wrong. America doesn't respond well to threats. We respond by building something better. But this is going to be a long fight. It's going to require sacrifice. It's going to require Americans to accept higher prices in the short term for security in the long term. It's going to require our political leaders to actually lead instead of just posturing. The world is watching to see if America still has the strength and determination to defend its economic sovereignty. China's making their move. Now it's our turn. So here's my question for you, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Should America accept short-term economic pain, higher prices, supply disruptions, slower growth, to build a rare earth supply chain independent of China? Or should we keep negotiating and maintain the current system where Beijing has leverage over our economy? Drop your answer in the comments. Make your case. Let's debate this like adults who understand what's actually at stake for our country's future. Because, at the end of the day, this isn't just about trade policy or rare earth elements. This is about whether America will remain economically independent and militarily capable in a world where our adversaries are actively working to make us dependent and vulnerable. What do you think China's next move will be if Trump doesn't back down? And what should America's response be if China starts strictly enforcing these controls on December 1st? The clock is ticking, the stakes are enormous, and the decisions made in the next few weeks will shape America's economic and national security for decades to come. That's the truth nobody else is telling you. Now you know what's really happening and why it matters for every single American.
If you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos.